as a lot of you may or may not know, in my younger days, I was a huge classic radio buff. In my room, actually they're tucked away for the most part, I probably have 40 to 50 classic radios and tube style radios from the 40s, 50s, and early 1960s. And what I'm going to start doing is, one by one, I'm going to take each one out. I'm going to document them for YouTube, and I'll show you guys what I actually have in my collection. Before we get started with one that I actually have kept out, this is one of the only ones I kept out in my room. It used to be on top of that speaker, but because I wasn't using it much, I figured to just put that alarm clock up there, and you guys can check out the video on that as well. That's that sound design alarm clock. But that's not what this is about. Starting with this radio, this is a Panasonic AM/FM tube style radio from right around 1955. Now, if you guys have ever watched Auction Hunters with Allen and Ton Half, you will see in their pawn shop this exact radio right on top of the register area. It's not by any means a unusual model, but it is something that I definitely really love to have in my collection. I picked this radio up when I was about 12 years old, and I got it from a place that a lot of you guys might know, and it's been pretty famous on TV, HDTV recently, a flea market flip, and that is the Stormville International or National Airport Flea Market that they have in Stormville, New York. And they have that about 5 or 6 times a year, and it's usually on the major holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, different things like that. Back in the day, I think I only gave about $25 for this, but this is worth considerably more now, especially seeing as it's in good to very good condition. So let's get started. On here you see the Panasonic logo. You have the AM/FM dial. This does use a wire dial. In other words, the tuning knob, which is right here, is attached to a wire, and it spins on a circular pulley, and as I turn that, it of course turns the dial. Down here, like I said, we have the tuning knob. Here you have your bandwidth, AM/FM selection. This is your volume knob right here, and this is the one thing that does need work on here. It does function, but it's got dirty contacts, so I'm going to take this apart and clean that. If I do that in the next few days, I might actually videotape that as well. And then over here you have your on-off switch, which also dubs, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, as a tone control. So if you only turn on a little bit, you have more bass. As you go over to the right, you get more tone and less bass. Very typical of a radio from this era. You can see it has the AM/FM badge right there. And that's just like a little bulb here that tells you that the radio is getting power. And I did have to clean this, and I'm actually not done. I have a few spots here I missed, but for the most part, it's been cleaned up. Now, turning to the back of the unit, you'll see pretty much you'd expect to see from a vintage tube radio of this time. You definitely have some vacuum tubes here. You got, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's one right back there. I don't know if you got camera can pick that up or not, but I believe there's actually 4 tubes in here. Over here you can see the speaker. Now, what I thought was interesting, this being from 1955, I don't know if you guys can make out that name or not, but that says Matsushita. They're a company now that tends to make DVD-ROM drives, DVD burners. So back in the day, they were actually making speakers. Now, without actually turning this over, because it is very heavy, you can make out just there that this is a 3.2 ohm speaker and can handle 3 watts of actual input. And the model is P630S and 16 cm. I can't read, remnant speaker. So pretty nice size. I would say this is probably about a 6x9 speaker in there. You can see some metal caps right here. This one is probably the filter cap. This one probably helps with the tuning. Again, I'm not an electronic genius, but I do know some of this. Right here, your different antennas. If I look back on here, this is the back of it. And it'll show you the different diagrams here. Okay, looks like there are a few more tubes in here than I thought. You got a 50C5, a 12 AV6, a 12 AL5, a 12 BAG, what looks like a 12 AJ7, and then back here you have a 17 EW8. I know I have a 17 EW8 still in my collection, and I think I have a 12 AV6, but I'll have to pull that out later. A lot of this stuff is still in storage. You can see here it's a Panasonic Model 730 AM/FM radio receiver, AC/DC, which I kind of find interesting because I don't see any way of actually powering this off of DC, unless maybe that was another model where you may have had a battery. Back then you'd have like a lead acid battery sometimes as an option. They could stick in there and somehow plug into the AC lead and it would be converted. 110 to 120 volt with and it uses 35 watts. And so this is definitely made for the US market only. There is not a 220 or 240 voltage circuit in here. Made by Matsushita Electric Company in Japan. So not only did they make the speaker, it looks like they actually made the whole radio. Now that I'm remembering, I think that Panasonic is owned by Matsushita, or at least it was at this time. Again, over here you have the AC plug, which is attached to this back plate, and it gives you a caution. The cover is provided with an interlock for protection against dangerous electrical shock. Do not defeat its purpose. Always remove cover completely for servicing. The reason they're saying that is when you have a radio like this, especially something with this vintage, there are not a lot of safety measures in place. So if you don't know what to touch in here, you could get a shock, especially if one of those tubes are charged, that would throw you across the room and stop your heart. So again, fair warning, don't do this unless you have at least a rudimentary knowledge of electronics. Going over here, you can see a capacitor right here, and it looks like model MPCONR, and I cannot make out what the ohms. I think it's a 5 microfarad cap, but it's kind of been worn out over the years. I thought this was kind of interesting. Has caution release dial pointer before removing the chassis. The dial pointer is way in the corner there. I don't think the camera will actually point that out. And the reason they want you to do that is the dial is actually under tension. So if you were to remove this and not reset it to the right point, then the whole thing could just pop off and you may never get it back on properly. So let's go ahead and put this back piece on and we'll go ahead and give this radio a try. Alright, the radio is plugged in, and the last time I used this about a year ago it did work, but as with any vintage electronics, especially tube radios, you never know if a tube or a component could have went bad. So this is really a true smoke test. So, smoke test. Well, that's a good sign. Looks like we're at least getting power. And because it's a tube radio, it's going to take just a minute to warm up. Well, we're definitely getting some static. Let's try and tune in a station. I do hear something. And again, this volume knob is very tricky, so I'll try to get it something up on it.
Many firms and advisors lump everyone into a similar set of assumptions and then apply a cookie cutter approach.
Not getting too much on the AM band, but this one was never a very strong AM receiver. I don't know why.
That means we can examine it in terms of the form of mist.
We'll go ahead and try FM real quick, because I don't want the copyright police on me. We'll go ahead and use NPR.
It would be they'd hurl a brisket out the window or a leg of lamb through plate glass or one of those big black, you know, rotary telephones, and then Mom would sort of retreat.
All right, so you can see this is working. Again, if I have time in the next couple of days, I'm definitely going to go ahead and clean this volume knob, but I will have to take the chassis out to do that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like I said, there's going to be a lot more of these vintage tube radios coming really shortly. So remember, as always, have a blessed day, everybody.